Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to the NoDQ panel here on NoDQ.com. My name is Aaron Rift. I am being joined by my usual panel guests. First, the West Coast professor, Jeff Meacham, trivia extraordinaire. We also have the self-proclaimed greatest columnist in NoDQ.com history with his Bill Murray t-shirt, Virtue. And our special guest today on the panel, James. How are you doing today, James?
Excellent, guys. I'm so stoked to be here. I'm so excited. Can't thank you enough.
Thank you very much for being on today. We appreciate it. We look forward to your input. Today's discussion will be the most epic pipe bomb promos in wrestling history. Those promos that just shook the foundation of professional wrestling. I have a huge list here, and I'm sure you guys have some ideas as well, some promos that you would like to bring up. I would like to start with what I consider to be, in my opinion, the pioneer promo of the pipe bombs, the promo that really started to blur the lines between reality and fiction. And that is the promo from Shane Douglas in 1994 when he threw down the NWA title. Jeff, I know you're a huge fan of Shane Douglas and ECW. What was the whole story there?
Yeah, remember, Shane Douglas, one of the first people we had on Extreme AM. He's one of the ones who really got us down that mountain, so to speak, after, we had the dance, everything like that. But yeah, Shane Douglas taking the NWA championship, the belt that had symbolized professional wrestling for the previous, whatever it was, 50 years, and just throwing it down in the middle of that bingo hall in Philadelphia was huge. And the promo he cut declaring that the NWA was all but dead. He said it was dead at the time. And he said the ECW title was now the Extreme World Championship. That was huge for ECW. It was detrimental to the NWA for many years. You got to remember, the NWA didn't really recover until they signed up with TNA, which was not until 8 years later. So, it was huge for Shane Douglas because it really put him on the map. And yeah, he was in WWE for a while after that and kind of flopped as the Dean. But that promo made ECW what it was, and it cemented Shane Douglas's place as the franchise. Virtue, I'm sure you agree.
Yeah, I mean, ECW, Paul Heyman, Paulie Dangerously, was creative freedom at its finest. And when you allow guys to go out there and say controversial, truthful, shoot promos, even if it's a worked shoot, you're going to get fans' reaction. And Aaron, this was probably a little bit pre-internet smartening up. I mean, people had the internet then, but it didn't take off probably for another 3 or 4 years. But fans were starting to get smarter in the business by then, and I think they really felt Shane's passion. I mean, let's be honest. How else are you going to create a franchise? I don't know if he thought that at the time, unless you do something with a bang. So you're going to find out. I have a couple other ones from that same era of ECW.
Oh, sounds good. I'm looking forward to hearing that. Yeah, I think that promo, like Jeff said, was really what got ECW off the ground. And I think fans were just at a point where they were sick of the cartoon aspect of wrestling. They wanted to see something different, and Shane Douglas just broke the glass and totally changed everything. James, I want to ask you, any thoughts on that promo, and what is your all-time favorite pipe bomb promo?
Well, I didn't see that in real time. I wasn't watching that particular promotion at the time. I did go back and see it on YouTube years later. It was a turning point. Absolutely. TNA really struggled to recover from that point. And I'm sorry, not TNA, NWA. Thinking forward,
same difference.
When they adapted the TNA, and we all see how that ended. Really, well, it didn't end yet, but no, it was a launching point for ECW, and it was really a standard for interpromotional pipe bombs. As far as I know, there wasn't really a big splash like that where, one company trashing another up to that point. So it set a standard, definitely.
Yeah, that was one of the first ones that I can remember. Virtue, I want to ask you, what other promos from ECW, you just mentioned it, do you consider to be really explosive and memorable?
So, yeah, and talking about finally trashing another company, I have two here. The first one I want to mention, I can't remember if it was 95 or 96. I want to say 95. Stunning Steve Austin, when he cut that promo, and I know he did a few of them, but he had the ball cap on. You've probably seen this video on Facebook. recently, people sharing it, bringing up like original pipe bombs, since everybody talks about CM Punk. But when Austin was cutting, this shoot promo, it was like in the backstage area, I want to say, in Philly. He was talking about how he had all these ideas to work with Sting, to work with Hogan, to work with Savage. And he would do the Dusty Rhodes voice and said, Dusty, that's not for you right now, Steve.
Yeah, not for you, baby, not right now.
Yeah, and then the whole way he got fired by Bischoff, this is where there were really lines in the sand drawn from one company to the other. And Bischoff started playing his power card, letting some of these wrestlers go. And they were trying to get over like Steve Austin in WCW, but with all the big names, it was hard. So they didn't want to leave the paycheck. So that it's almost like they took these firings. And what happened is then they went to the best opportunity they could. And Steve Austin, I can't verbatim word for word, but honestly, I think out of all these promos we're going to discuss today, that is my favorite one, because that was hints of Stone Cold Steve Austin. If we remember, when he went to WWF as the ringmaster, Vince didn't want him to talk.
Right.
So it's like Vince didn't watch the other products. Somebody had to smarten him up on what some of these guys could do.
And Austin was venting his frustrations. He was really upset about getting fired by WCW, so he was basically just speaking his mind and doing the worked shoot. This is where the worked shoot promo really began to take effect. And he would talk about Monday NyQuil and Mako Hogan. Yeah, that was great stuff. And another one I remember is the Kane Dewey promo. Jeff, you remember that one?
I watched 4 promos today to prep for this, and that was one of the ones I watched, because Kane Dewey was one of those ones that was done in character as Cactus Jack. But it was really how Mick Foley felt. Some fan had taken the time to make a 2-word sign talking about caning his 3-year-old little boy. It's like, as a father, that boggles my mind that some crazy person in the middle of that bingo hall would have the forethought, I'm going to make a sign that talks about caning a 3-year-old child. Like, that's beyond anything I could ever imagine.
Yeah, as a father, that triggers you.
Yeah, and Mick took that and went, okay, I'm going to make sure Cactus Jack talks about this, because nothing would drive a father crazier than a threat against his child. And for Cactus Jack to be threatened like that, Cactus Jack was the first certifiable crazy man. You had Terry Funk and you had Abdullah, but Cactus Jack was crazy on a national stage. And for him to be driven to the point that he was talking about letting Tommy go to WCW just to be his salvation, that was Paul said either on his DVD or on the ECW DVD that was one of ECW's defining moments, and it was definitely Mick Foley's defining moment up to that point.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100% on that. And we started seeing WCW start to be influenced by ECW. We saw the Medusa promo when she showed up on Nitro and trashed the Women's Championship. I've always been Medusa, always will be Medusa. And then she throws the belt in the trash. That was shocking television. And we started to see more of that, this shock TV. ECW, I think, really got that going. And that's part of why ECW was so influential. And people remember ECW so fondly because it was innovative. It was causing the game to change, and for WWE and WCW to start implementing the shoot promos. James, I want to ask you, any promos from around this period that stand out to you in particular from this early Monday Night War period?
One that I have a list of about 17 that I came up with, and I tried to highlight maybe 5.
Okay.
Around that time, what I have is the 1996 JR shoot where he goes off about wearing the toga at WrestleMania, and that to me was I think that was the first time you ever saw someone on the commentary side shoot, and who knew JR had that in him up to that point. And that was a turning point for JR, and that's one that sticks out in my mind.
And in that promo, he referenced Vince McMahon as the owner. This was the first time that Vince was acknowledged as the owner of the company. For the longest time, Vince was just in storyline a TV announcer, and this was WWE breaking kayfabe and referring to Vince as the actual owner of the company. And
if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not mistaken, didn't he reference the steroid trial in that promo as well?
Yeah, because what happened was JR talked about how he got fired, so this was the worked shoot promo. And I think this was the real first worked shoot promo on Raw that I could remember. If you guys remember any other ones. I know Diesel did something that was somewhat of a worked shoot promo right after Survivor Series where he came out and said, for the past year, I've been the corporate champion and I'm tired of it. I'm just going to be me from now on. So that was really the beginning of it. But JR coming out there, he talked about being fired by Vince, and then because of the steroid trial, they needed an announcer, so they brought back JR, and then they fired him again, and then finally they brought him back and kept him. So JR was, again, just venting his frustrations and working it into the storyline. Of course, the whole thing with the fake Razor and the fake Diesel was extremely lame, but the promo itself, I mean, JR was awesome. He's like, you think my left eye, you think I like that my left eye cannot open all the way because I got sick? I mean, it was great stuff. JR was just on fire.
Yeah, bringing the Bell's palsy into it, and then that was incredible too. The realism of these promos, people were buying into it. They didn't felt like they were watching something scripted. That's really what I take out of these.
Yeah, I mean, you would never imagine Jim Ross, the quirky little announcer from WCW and WWE, cutting a promo like that. It was like, whoa, Jim, take it easy, brother. It was a little bit tough to take in at first. Yeah, very much a pipe bomb. Exactly. You mentioned announcers not breaking the fourth wall, so to speak, Aaron. I remember distinctly when we saw Vince sit down with JR after the Survivor Series, and it really wasn't a promo necessarily, but it was one of those things where, no, you know what? I sat there, I did it. Yeah, Brett screwed Brett, but I made the decision. And I'm Mr. McMahon now, however you want to say that. But yeah, that was one of the things that Vince McMahon actually broke the fourth wall, so to speak, and really came out as, yeah, I'm the boss, and it was my decision. So there you go.
Yeah, you mentioned Bret Hart. You talk about Bret Hart, and earlier in the year, we started seeing these very realistic promos from Bret Hart talking about being screwed and all that. And I remember on Raw when he lost the cage match because of the interference from Sid and Steve Austin. Actually, it was Sid versus Bret Hart, and Undertaker and Austin got involved. Right. And Bret felt he got screwed, and he shoves Vince, and then he starts using profanity. And this was insane at the time. Bret dropping the S word and just venting his frustrations. I mean, it was very captivating television leading up to WrestleMania. And you felt like Bret Hart and Steve Austin really hated each other. I mean, that's what made that storyline so compelling.
Well, to hear this consummate professional babyface say, this is BS. He didn't say BS, it's something else, but, just screaming at the top of his lungs at Vince and everybody else around him. And just the reaction of Vince's face. He looked at Bret and he looked with disdain and anger. And he almost called him an SOB on commentary before JR and King calmed him down.
And the thing is,
that was huge.
The thing is, Bret has never been known for his promos, but the stuff he did in '97, it was his best work because he was able to add real life into the storyline. And the night after WrestleMania, when he did his official heel turn, he was really frustrated because the fans were cheering for Steve Austin, this guy who was breaking all the rules. It was just so organic, and it worked so well. And when he said, the American fans coast to coast can kiss my ass. I mean, such a beautiful promo there from Bret Hart.
Aaron, you mentioned a very important word there, organic. The entire heel turn with Bret was very organic, and the fact that it was very real in that he felt like the American wrestling fans were more slighting him and cheering for Steve Austin, whereas the fans abroad and in Canada were still cheering for Bret. It felt very real. The fact that we as American wrestling fans were turning against Bret and turning against the entire Hart family, and it really didn't start getting watered down necessarily. It really felt organic until SummerSlam when the whole Bret Shawn thing went down, and then we had Shawn turn heel. That was made it kind of wishy-washy after that.
Right. Now, I think we should go back a little bit. There are a few other things I wanted to mention. Brian Pillman, back during the ECW period in WCW, he was starting to really blur the lines between reality and fiction. Virtue, your thoughts on Pillman?
I remember it vividly in the middle of the ring with Joey Styles. I believe this was Pillman's ECW debut. Again, he mentioned how he was fired by WCW and Eric Bischoff, following the whole same route as Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I remember vividly calling Bischoff a piece of effing shit.
Hey.
And that was just one of the, I mean, now the profanity, ECW's amping it up, not just the insane hardcore style matches, but like we talked about earlier, they were really blurring the lines of reality and kayfabe. And Pillman was absolutely unbelievable because you saw it in his eyes too. Now, granted, if he was working the crowd because he was that good, but like this guy, whatever he could have said a scripted line out of his mouth, or he could have did a shoot on Eric Bischoff. The camera zooming in, his blonde hair, the eye. I mean, we're missing that today. Dean Ambrose tries, but nobody can emulate some of these guys in the past. So I guess what are your thoughts on Pillman? Because I know he ended up going to WWF after this, and it always seemed like WWF watered things down a little bit. So what's your thoughts on Pillman? Could it have been more if he stayed in ECW?
Well, I think the whole problem was Bischoff allowed Pillman to go with the thought that he was going to come back.
Yeah.
And Bischoff worked himself so much that he ended up really firing Brian.
He worked himself into
Brian
a
went to
shoot,
WWE.
brother.
Yeah, Pillman in that promo mentioned that Bischoff was getting coffee for Gagne or Gagne,
which he
incredible.
was.
Yeah, but that's incredible because like not all people knew that. You know what I mean?
I remember before he went to ECW when he was at Super Brawl looking at Kevin, I respect you, Booker, man. It's like Brian was so ahead of his time. And it just sucks that he got hurt and then got on the medication. It was bad. But Brian Pillman's promos in ECW and even the whole gun thing on Raw was huge.
Yeah, I mean, that was incredible. And if Pillman had lived, who knows what he would have been able to come up with during the Attitude Era, feuding with Steve Austin and The Rock and Triple H. I mean, Pillman would have had some great promos, no doubt. Now, let's talk about the NWO. Scott Hall coming on Nitro, the first 2-hour Nitro, and that to me is one of the all-time greatest promos. That was like a true pipe bomb. Scott Hall coming out there referencing Billionaire Ted, and this whole invasion would appear to be the WWF guys coming into WCW to invade. I mean, that promo, I remember that one word for word. It was so memorable, and it really was a turning point in the Monday Night Wars. James, your thoughts on Scott Hall's promo, how you reacted to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's so iconic, and I remember that the first line says, "You know who we are, but you don't know why we're here." It just it was just awesome, and it really just made you. For me, that was when I started getting smart to the business, to use wrestling terms. It's when I said, "What the hell's going on here?" Yeah. And I think it's one of the things that made me try to look into it. Maybe start going to the internet. Back then, I didn't have it, but I'd go to the library on Saturdays and try to use the computers, and I tried to get smart to the business. And it was because of this the Outsiders angle, and because of that initial promo that Scott Hall did on Nitro.
Yeah, just imagine if we had Twitter and Facebook back then. I mean, it would have just exploded if Scott Hall had shown up there on Nitro like that. I mean, it would have been unbelievable. I can only imagine how people reacted. I mean, people's jaws had to be dropping when Scott Hall got into the ring, and the way he did it, just two guys in the ring having a match, and Scott Hall just walks right in the ring and those guys take off. The whole thing just felt like totally unscripted, and that's what made it so great. And then
we have to thank Vince McMahon because he created him, or he made the Razor gimmick. So everybody knew Scott Hall's Razor Ramon is a gimmick in WWF. So the fact that when you saw him do this on Nitro, you're thinking Razor, but then all of a sudden he's introducing you to Scott Hall. That's what I remember. I mean, at 16 years old, I was thinking Razor Ramon in WCW. Who's Scott Hall? And I learned right then and there. That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, and then, of course, the birth of the NWO with Hulk Hogan coming out there, turning heel and dropping the bomb on everybody, just being total prick mode, talking about how he made wrestling and wasn't getting treated with respect by the fans. You fans can stick it, brother. Hogan.
I think that was all a shoot, really. He was frustrated. He was frustrated.
People crapped on Hogan for years, but what part of that promo was not 100% on the money?
Yes. He got to finally just take the handcuffs off and say what was on his mind.
Because think about it, were it not for Hulk Hogan coming to WCW 2 years prior, Bischoff would have been back in Minneapolis selling meat for Vergani or whatever he was doing. There'd be no people coming out of high school wanting to join wrestling because Hulk Hogan wouldn't have been around. All these guys that came to WCW because of Hogan wouldn't have been in WCW. There would have been no WCW without Hulk Hogan.
Exactly. And what about when Roddy Piper showed up a couple months later at Halloween
God.
and said, I was just as big of an icon in this sport as you were. And they talked about WrestleMania 1 and all that. What was the line? If they hadn't hated me so much, do you think they would have loved you so much? I mean, that was just awesome. And then that set up their big match, Piper coming in. And Piper was always great at promos. And definitely that one at Halloween Havoc was one of his best ones. Another shocking moment when he showed up there. And anytime Piper had a live mic, you knew something controversial was going to be said. I mean, he was born to controversy, as they say.
Well, when I'm going to talk about Punk's promo Ring of Honor in a few minutes, but Punk said when the microphone was in his hand, it was about power. That's what Roddy Piper was. When a microphone was in Roddy Piper's hand, it was an instrument of power, not just a simple microphone. And Piper always knew that, and always knew that as long as he could use his voice, he had that power to captivate the people and get the booker's attention, always.
Right. And then in 97, we had more crazy promos in the WWE. We had Jeff Jarrett coming back after leaving WCW and basically just ripping into WWE for how he was treated. I think he mentioned having to work with a black man, and that was a controversial remark at the time.
Yeah.
And then the clown, and Jeff Jarrett was pissed off. He said, you could take With My Baby Tonight and stick it up your butt. So that was when we saw some promos that started to really lead into the Attitude Era, with the controversy. Excuse me. James, your thoughts on that period? And I know Jim Cornette cut a couple really interesting promos around that time. What do you remember from that period?
I was actually going to say the Jeff Jarrett one that was on my list, and it was almost to me foreshadowing to see the relationship he ended up having with Vince McMahon and WWE, WWF at the time. It was looking back, it was makes you scratch your chin a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he took his frustrations out on Vince, so who knows, how much of that was real and how much of that was show.
Well, exactly. Go ahead, Virtue.
What I remember about the Cornette promos that were airing on Raw every week, the ones I remember, the ones he was backstage and they had the WWF logo behind him. You could sense he was getting frustrated already with the new style of wrestling and the Attitude Era coming in, and probably Vince Russo's involvement. And so I think Cornette started shooting hard on just everything it's professional wrestling, not sports entertainment. He was going off on everything. And so that's what I remember. And I always enjoyed, it's like they did them weekly. I don't know how long that went on, but there was a bunch of good old James Cornette stuff on Raw. And I was interested in every week.
Well, at one point he said, Hulk Hogan, you are a household name, but so is garbage, and it stinks when it gets old too. That was a great line.
That was. It's funny. Our generation, I don't know about James, I don't know how James is, but our generation will remember Jim Cornette for managing the Midnight Express and Yokozuna as much as for his shoot promos later. But I think the younger generation, the people younger than us, are going to remember Cornette for his shoot promos, not for his managerial style. Would you agree with that, James?
Yes, I mean, I like at WrestleMania 17 with the gimmick battle royal, and he came out with the tennis racket. I popped so hard because that was the Jim Cornette I remembered.
Right.
But I am a huge fan of whether it's garbage he's spewing or gold. He always captivates me, no matter what he's saying, whether I agree or disagree. So I mean, for me, it's equal. For as much as his managerial career and his post career with all the shoots, he's equally remembered in my book.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, Jim Cornette had some great promos, whether he was doing a warped shoot or not. I mean, he had some great stuff. And then we got more into the Attitude Era, the back-and-forth battle between WWE and WCW. When WWE turned the corner and started winning, they had this segment where DX invaded the arena where WCW was holding Nitro. And this led to Eric Bischoff coming out on television and challenging Vince McMahon to a fight on pay-per-view. That was just insane,
That was one of those things where you just go, will he actually show up? Will he actually be at Slamboree?
I thought that too.
Yeah, because what's funny is he wasn't, only because Stephanie was graduating from college that weekend, but Vince even said himself that if it wasn't for Stephanie's graduation, he was actually considering it.
Yeah, but that thing was not scripted. I mean, Bischoff looked so visibly shaken. He was so angry that these guys had the gall to pull that stunt. He just went out there and he just said, screw it, I'm going to call out Vince McMahon on live television. I mean, that's how personal it got between Bischoff and Hogan.
That was kind of Bischoff's downfall, though. He started reacting without thinking things out. WWE got on. I mean, this was real life.
Yeah.
And the whole tank incident, I wonder if that door never shut, how far would they have went into the arena?
Well, what was the story? I think there was some story. Nash had a story or somebody.
Well, yeah. Kevin Nash walked to that door and said, "Open that door."
He knew.
He wanted his buddies to come on Nitro. There was nothing anybody could have done to stop the click at that point.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that's I think the point where I think it all got a little too real. When
really
Bischoff, they were getting under. To me, that's when I knew WWE had won. The Monday Night War was over when Bischoff came out there, because it showed me that they got to Bischoff. They really messed with his head.
Yep.
And to me, that's when the tide had turned really for good, and there was no turning back when that happened.
WWE had a lot of weapons. They had, Vince McMahon was allowing Russo to do his stuff, Bruce Pritchard to do his stuff. The creative of Kevin Dunn, and the great theme music by Jim John. I mean, WWE had all those tools. I don't think WCW had, and I think that was around the time Bischoff started realizing that.
Well, it's funny. When was the last time Nitro actually won the Monday Night War? The night after Halloween Havoc, when they rebroadcast the Goldberg DDP match for free. If they hadn't rebroadcast that match for free, they wouldn't have won that night. And it was well before that they had won a previous night. So Aaron's totally on the ball there. The fact that Bischoff had an immediate gutter reaction and got visibly PO'd showed that it was over.
Yeah, and then we started seeing guys from WCW jump ship to WWE, and I remember Chris Jericho's debut, and what a promo that was when he came out there and finally got to let his talents be showcased and cut an amazing promo on The Rock, and managed to reference WCW with the Juventud line. Actually, I think that might have been The Rock that did it, but just great stuff between Jericho and The Rock, back and forth exchange there. That was an all-time great promo. So any other promos, James, from this period, late 90s, that we have not discussed yet that you would like to bring up here?
No, I don't have anything else on my list from that period.
Anything else
Aaron, before we leave the Jericho debut, you could tell when he delivered that. It was a very cartoony promo. I wouldn't say the Jericho promo, on his debut against The Rock was a shoot pipe bomb by any means. But what I got out of it, all the frustration that he had in WCW, and the fact that they wouldn't let him just do that pay-per-view squash match with Goldberg, all he wanted to do. Even though Bill was a big star and Jericho knew he wasn't going to get a big match out of him, the fact that they didn't go through with that in WCW and the way he left, you saw all of that, hey, Bischoff. And again, isn't it funny how Bischoff seems to be a common denominator in this discussion?
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Creates these great promos in other companies. But I saw that in Jericho that night. He got it all off his chest in more of a cartoony way, but you could still see it.
Yeah, I mean, it was similar to that promo that Austin did, venting his frustrations. That first Jericho promo was his way of sticking it to WCW.
Remember, he was making fun of WWF, ratings are plummeting. It was none of that was true. WWE was doing really, really well.
Yeah.
So you knew he was making fun of WCW by saying that. That's
exactly.
Really
and I also want to mention X-Pac's return when he came back the night after WrestleMania 14 and just totally ripped into Hogan and Bischoff and said if it wasn't for Eric Bischoff, Hall and Nash would be right here with us if they were not being held hostage by WCW. And that's a fact, Eric Bischoff, so put that in your pipe and smoke it. What I loved about that promo was that it gave WWE the cool factor. All of a sudden, WCW and the NWO seemed uncool. And for the longest time, NWO symbolized what was cool in wrestling.
The whole promo is in my mind for one reason. Sean goes, "I couldn't cut the mustard, huh? Well, you suck, pal." To Hogan. It was
Eric Bischoff acted like Sean Waltman was not important. He was not a factor in the Monday Night Wars. And even Jim Cornette buried X-Pac in one of those promos he did in late 97, saying that the only reason he's employed is because the other guys find it funny when he gets drunk and throws up on himself.
And think about this. That promo by X-Pac, that rebooted D-Generation X. Sean was going to be out for a while. Sean was the heart and soul of that original DX. So the fact that Outlaws and X-Pac joined Triple H and the promo X-Pac did on Raw, which was that with Aaron? Was that the night after WrestleMania 14 on Raw?
Yes.
X-Pac rejuvenated D-Generation X because of that.
And I just love that Bischoff comes out on TV and goes, "Hey, Sean Waltman, bite me." It's like, ooh, we're scared, Eric. Ooh, look out, Bischoff.
Yeah.
Look out.
So petty. Yeah.
So in WCW, I want to talk about Scott Steiner here. While we're still on the topic of WCW. He went into business for himself several times with promos, and the one that sticks out, there were two that stick out to me, but the one that sticks out the most, I'll talk about the second one first, was when he ripped into DDP towards the end of WCW, and by that point, he could say whatever he wanted. Nobody was going to punish him. He was the world champion. He brought up how DDP needed to have a sex change operation, and the thing is, they were not even feuding at the time. So it was just really weird. But the first one was very similar because Scott Steiner came out and started ripping into Ric Flair, even though the two of them were not feuding. They had no interaction on television. He just went out there and started bashing Flair, called him a jealous old bastard, the Nature Boy #2, ripping off Buddy Rogers. And then, he mentioned that Ric Flair was playing politics and people are now grabbing their remotes and changing the channel to the WWF to watch guys like Stone Cold, that Flair and his friends got fired. He was just ripping into Flair hard on WCW. And he said that WCW sucks. All this stuff that just made WCW look like a completely second-rate promotion. And
that's one of the ones I watched today.
Yeah.
Ass-kissing, butt-sucking, jealous old bastard. I went, really, Scotty? Wow.
It's amazing. Scott Steiner without a filter. I mean, it's as if he didn't know the cameras were on him when he was out in that ring. It was just very bizarre.
Dude, I've never been scared about being around anybody in wrestling, really. I mean, there's a few people that kind of legitimately frightened me because they were, like, legitimate tough guys, and I had no, with them, whatever, I had no respect with them, whatever. Scott Steiner frightened me from my living room. He scares the bejesus out of me. James, how about you?
I mean, what can you say about Scott Steiner that hasn't been said? I mean, that promo, he had nothing to do with Flair, and he just lit into him. It was sour grapes at its finest.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is he came out with the NWO 2000 group, Jarrett and Scott Hall and the Girls and the Creative Control, the hair, whatever you want to call them, and nothing to do with Flair. Flair was a fellow heel with Luger, and here he goes. Scott just starts cutting. It's like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of WCW, I got one. I want a brief, quick opinion from all three of you guys, if you remember.
I think I know which one you're going to reference here.
Bash at the Beach 2000, Vince Russo. I understand he was way too involved on the camera. He had the WCW title. He should have just stuck to what he knew, writing, should have stayed in WWF. But to be honest with you, that was an awesome promo. Now, again, if he delivered it, he didn't even know what he was going to say. So it was literally, he went out there and just did a shoot. I enjoyed it. Now, again, everybody knows I'm a Russo mark, but if anybody hates Vince Russo, go back and watch that and tell me it sucked, because it didn't. What do you guys think?
Oh, it was very entertaining. I thought it was very entertaining. Was it good for business? No, because I think 95% of the people watching had no idea what he was talking about. I mean, the problem with Russo's promos is that there were points where it just got so inside that only a very small portion of the audience knew what he was talking about. And when the fans are confused, what do? They tune out. They lose interest.
Ahead of his time, though, because he was shooting those promos like he was doing it in 2017. Because if he did a promo like that today, everybody would know exactly what he's talking about.
The passion was there. I mean, that's what was so good about it.
That's what I get. Like, when I see that out of anybody, and I see that passion, like Enzo, I just absolutely love it. And I will put it over and over and over. So what do you think, James, on Russo? Do you remember that?
I do remember that. For me, that promo would have stood out a heck of a lot more had it not been for the years after, where it just got overdone. with the inside references, the work shoots or the shoot shoots. That promo by itself, if you just take that little block of time and look at it, yeah, it was awesome. I totally marked up for it. But I mean, just like I said, Russo just overdid it after that, and for me, that watered it down a lot.
Let's keep in mind that whole night led to one thing: Booker T finally getting to the top of the mountain.
Yeah. And that I had no problem with, because I'm a fan of Booker T. I respected Booker T then. I respect him now to this day, except for his commentary skills, not so much. But the fact that Vince went into business for himself, and the fact that he decided to let everybody on the outside in on the inside and say, hey, Hogan's playing politics, Hogan's doing this. The problem with Vince Russo is and will always be, he wants to still be Vic Venom from 1994. He doesn't want to be Vince Russo, the guy in charge of creative behind the scenes. He wants to be Vic Venom, the on-camera talent. And
I think that was created in WCW, because he didn't obviously do that in WWE.
Oh, yes, he did. If you read WWF Magazine back then, when he wrote his columns and when he first appeared on like Livewire and stuff, he was very much like that. He just didn't go completely balls out like he did in WCW later. Oh, that guy was very much inside him and came out here and there in the WWF. No question about that.
I mean, I thought it was entertaining, but maybe it should have been more of a talent than somebody that could manipulate the decision making. I
think if he had honestly stayed with the script and got with Bischoff and Hogan on that, and still did that with their approval, and Hogan coming back and doing what they're supposed to do at Halloween Havoc, it would have been 10 times more effective.
Well, he claims he did. He claims he did. You know, the whole crap of the defamation of character and blah blah blah. But anyway, we can move on. It wasn't supposed to be that long of a topic.
All right, really WCW did go out of business not too long after that, and we had the Invasion angle. And there's one promo in particular I really remember from the Invasion, and that was right before Survivor Series when Paul Heyman confronted Vince McMahon in the ring. James, what do you remember about that promo?
Yeah, that was actually the first one on my list from 2001, the Go Home SmackDown before the Survivor Series.
Yes.
Yeah, oh my God. Like, what can you say? It was Heyman saying everything he wanted to say and having a hot mic to do it. And it was just totally from his heart. It was everything Paul Heyman represented. It was just, when he threw his hat and said, screw you, just goosebumps.
Real passion there. What do you think, Jeff?
Paul, I said it. I actually saw it on my Facebook on this day, whatever it was, a little while ago when it came up. If anybody can sit there and tell me that Paul Heyman is not the greatest orator, however you say that word, in the history of this business, you're out of your damn mind. Paul always had that ability to captivate an entire audience, be it globally, nationally, whatever you want to say it. He had the ability to do it. And that promo and the one he cut at One Night Stand a few years later encapsulated everything about that, because Paul had the passion. He was legitimately upset that his company was gone, legitimately upset that he had to work for the WWF just to get by and make a living. Yeah, he enjoyed being a commentator. Yeah, he enjoyed being a creative guy, but he wanted to be the guy, and he would never be the guy again. And that was very hard for him to accept. So for him to cut that promo and just toss his head at Vince, screw you, and just right in his face, it was just so, like you said, passion.
Yeah, and
I don't think we're giving enough props to Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon needs the props because he knows how to capitalize on the situations, when he gets a company or a company goes out of business. Now, yes, the whole WCW angle did not work out like it was supposed to, but there was an initial buzz. But Vince McMahon knew exactly what he was doing with letting Heyman cut that promo and do those things. How much of it was scripted, how much was it shoot? Only Vince and Paul Heyman will know, but it came across great on television.
People invested. It got people invested in the pay-per-view.
Well, what was
great smart for letting it happen.
Vince didn't have to say a word.
Yeah.
Paul cut that entire promo. Taz came up and choked Paul out, and then Vince, a little throwaway line, "You were like the Alliance, Paul. You're going to choke." And it was like, that was all from Vince. But Paul's entire, I think Paul's promo ability got better. Not got better. It was still great then, but it really turned a corner when he when he did One Night Stand, and then when he rejoined Brock Lesnar as his advocate. I think Paul's promo skills are just unbelievable.
Yeah, that One Night Stand promo, him coming out there and ripping into all the Raw guys and, mentioning Matt freaking Hardy. You know, that was
Yes,
great stuff.
yes.
And then Joey Styles a year later, right before the second One Night Stand, coming out there and talking about how he got bumped from Backlash. I mean, that was a great promo too. You know, just ranting on WWE and their style.
Remember, One Night Stand, JBL up in the balcony said some nice things and got some heat. I don't know if you guys remember some of those promos.
John's just a prince, isn't he? He really is.
But like again, it was, and we could have, you know, that was all maybe created because of Paul Heyman there. So maybe we should give more props on the JBL spots at the One Night Stands to Heyman himself. But yeah.
Well, I think John's inner bully came out at that point, and he just kind of went with it.
Yeah. Now, are there any other ones from the mid-2000s you guys want to bring up? I remember Bischoff coming out for the first time, you know, shaking hands with Vince, and then Bischoff cutting his promo, just venting his frustrations and bragging about how he, you know, took WWE to the limit with the Monday Night War and all that. So, I mean, that was a very memorable promo, but just the shock of seeing Bischoff there was a pipe bomb in itself.
It really was.
I'm ready for 2011. I don't know about everybody else.
Okay,
well, no. Hang on. Before we get to 2011, we have to talk about 2005. Because 2005, CM Punk was in an arena for Ring of Honor and became the Ring of Honor champion and grabbed the belt and said, this belt and this microphone, anybody else's hands, is just a belt and a microphone. In my hands, they are power. Before he ever even dreamed of sitting on that stage in Las Vegas in 2011, he cut a very similar, almost a pre-promo to that promo because he was getting ready to leave for the WWE in 2005. He turned heel on the entire audience, on his friends, on everybody involved with Ring of Honor, and he signed his WWE contract on the Ring of Honor title. Right. That was like, dude, you're the devil. Like, you signed your contract for the great evil corporation on our title. Like, Punk in Ring of Honor does not get near enough credit, I think, to this day, because people got so wrapped up in his WWE character they forget. And I tell you, you need to go back and watch. As much as Punk will hate me saying this, go back and watch his WWE produced DVD Best in the World, and it talks about his Ring of Honor time. And go back and YouTube. I actually YouTubed the Ring of Honor promos before we came on the air here, or whatever you want to call this, on the film here. And just watching that stuff, I go, God dang it, he was good.
Oh, yeah. Punk was tremendous. But before we get to 2011, I want to talk about a couple of TNA ones real quick and see if you guys have any opinions.
Okay.
There were two TNA promos that really stand out to me. One was when Roddy Piper showed up in TNA and confronted Vince Russo and brought up Owen Hart. I mean, that was really uncomfortable. But
that really was.
That was definitely a pipe bomb. I don't know if that was necessarily the most entertaining promo because it was more uncomfortable than anything else, but you could sense some real frustrations from Piper ripping into Russo. And there was one with Tony Schiavone too. They were trying in the early days, you know, Tony Schiavone coming out there. It was actually very entertaining. Schiavone as a heel, I thought was really entertaining, but they only did it as a one-off segment. But I thought it was actually surprisingly entertaining. Schiavone had a beard and was talking about what's her name being tits and ass and that sort of thing. What was the name of the female announcer?
Goldilocks.
Yeah. Anything you guys want to add about that?
Mayhem guest, by the way, Riff, that's okay.
That is true. And let's not forget Samoa Joe's promo on Scott Hall in 2007 when Scott Hall no-showed. That was actually one of Joe's best promos. Anything you guys want to add from the TNA era? Any specific pipe bomb promos?
I'm not gonna try to put myself over here, but any interview we had on Extreme Mayhem between 2002 and 2004, I think would be a great pipe bomb. I mean, you know, you talk about Bobby Heenan shooting on Tony Schiavone. You talk about, you know, Chyna when she was on the show, Randy Savage when he shot on Hulk Hogan, the Iron Sheik when he shot on Hulk Hogan on our show. You know, any of those interviews we had in the first 2 years of the show, go back and look if you ever find them. That is, Aaron put them up. Those were really great. I
agree on that. All right, so
the original TNA run, Raven had some good stuff when they were doing that early TNA.
Yeah, Raven's one of those guys like CM Punk. He don't get credit now because he's gone now, but Raven can cut a promo, shoot or not, and really draw you in.
Yeah, it's too bad WCW never gave him the chance to really speak his
I
mind.
do have a TNA one real quick. I remember it was 2009. I was at Universal Studios and we got free tickets to the show right after the park closed. And I don't think this ever made the air, or I don't even know if there's footage of it, but I forget who was in the ring, but somebody got hurt in the ring, and they continued the match. And after the match, Kevin Nash came out with a live mic and ripped into Dixie Carter for not stopping the match. And he said something along the lines of, these guys are putting their asses on the line to make you money, and you couldn't give two shits about them, and you continue the match. When a guy goes down, you stop the match. It's what you do. And then he continued with his scripted promo. So I don't know if there's actually any footage of that, but I remember I was there live.
I remember seeing that. No.
Yeah, so it was just, I think it was just for the arena. He came out and he cut that little shoot real quick before his scripted promo. But I wish I filmed that.
Well, I know
Nash. Cool.
I know Nash had his fair share of ones at WCW. Another one I remember is Eddie Guerrero in WCW. Right before he formed the LWO, he poured the coffee on himself, and they could have done so much more with that, though. I think the follow up to that was pretty weak, but that could have been Eddie Guerrero's breakout moment. It should have been, in WCW when he cut that promo ripping into Bischoff.
Once again, Bischoff blows the opportunity.
Yeah. And, we should mention Flair's promo, too, when he came back to reform the Four Horsemen, when he just ripped into Bischoff. Bischoff has been, the subject of, half of these, Virtue said.
Controversy creates
cash. Absolutely.
Yeah, Bischoff was, the target for everybody when it came to shoot promos. But, yeah, Flair...
he'll block no DQ unless he already has.
Flair talking about abuse of power and all that. I mean, that was one of the best promos of all time.
Let me say for the record, because I follow Bischoff on Twitter and he responds to me a lot on Twitter. I like Eric Bischoff, but he was an easy target back then.
Yeah. Now, 2011, obviously that's the big elephant in the room when it comes to pipe bomb promos. What else could be said about it that we haven't said already? I mean, I've said it a million times. I mean, that promo was just out of nowhere. It had been several years since WWE had done a promo like that on television. So when it happened, everybody just went in complete shock. And like I said, it crashed NoDQ.com, which has only happened a couple of times in history. Jeff, your thoughts? You were there live in person.
I was going to say, I was there live, and I remember distinctly, I was sitting toward the opposite from the stage at the Thomas and Mack in Vegas, and Punk is doing his thing, saying his venom, and my phone starts vibrating. It's Rift. What the hell is going on up there? The site's crashing. I'm like, dude, wait till you see it.
Yeah,
it was unbelievable.
James, I want to ask you.
It was one of those things where. Oh, go ahead.
Let's ask James about it, because you're wearing the CM Punk T-shirt. What was your reaction when that happened?
I mean, obviously, it was just shocked. I couldn't move. Staring at the TV, like, what the hell am I watching? But after I got a chance to rewatch it and really listen to it, what shocked me more than the words Punk said was the fact that they allowed him to say it. I just didn't think WWE would take the risk anymore of doing something like that, and that's what added the shock value for me, is the fact that they let him do it. And when he started talking about the Vince McMahon bully campaign, and then they cut him off.
Yeah.
That's when I figured, if once they start talking about the boss, that's where they draw the line. But yeah,
the content of his promo is self-explanatory. What made it special was the imagery. Oh, am I hearing feedback?
Oh, no, you sound
fine.
Good.
You're good.
The imagery of John Cena initially laying in the ring from going through the table and then sitting up, and then there's some of the camera shots, the way it panned in, and John Cena was in the middle of it. That, because he was the company man, that was the right move. That, to me, is what made it extra special. The fact that CM Punk was saying all these grievances on live television, and Cena, the company man for the previous 6 years, was sitting right in the middle of the ring listening.
Right.
Well, go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, I was going to say, what made this different from the other promos from the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars is that Punk was really speaking for the fans. He was, as he said, the voice of the voiceless. He was venting the frustrations of the fans. The fans were frustrated with the WWE product. And, he talked about how the company's going to be just as bad when Vince is dead, because it'll be run by the doofus son-in-law and idiotic daughter Stephanie. So I mean,
and here we are 6 years later, and yeah.
And my favorite line, as I've mentioned, is Vince is a millionaire who should be a billionaire, and that's how I feel about WWE. This is a company that could be so much greater, but Vince just feels comfortable coasting along and not taking chances and just make some money instead of maybe making a lot of money.
Well, Punk hit it the nail on the head when he talked about he listens to douchebag yes men like Laurinaitis, who is the biggest jerk I've ever met in the business, besides Josh Matthews, of course. That whole thing, and it's funny you mentioned the fans, Aaron, because he even said to the people in the crowd, by the way, the people cheering for me, you're the reason I'm leaving, because you're buying the cups, you're buying the program and sticking in my face at 5:00 at the airport. You know, he was angry at the WWE fans. And what the best part about this, he mentioned this on the DVD. He signed his renewal contract 2 hours before going to the ring to face Cena at Money in the Bank. Everything he said in that promo was 100% off the cuff.
Well, I tend to think that that's a bit over dramatic. I mean, I doubt WWE would allow that to happen, but you know, I do think that, you know, there was some truth to that, definitely, and some real frustrations. He obviously left for real a couple years later. Now, one last topic before we wrap this up. You know, speaking of CM Punk, his future wife, AJ Lee, in 2014 cut the what was it called? The Pipe Bombshell promo when she ripped into all the Total Divas and ripped into the women on the roster. And to me, that was really what started the women's revolution when she came out there and cut this promo on the other women. Virtue, your thoughts on that promo?
Well, I actually had another one of CM Punk, but I'll save that. Go to my Twitter. I'll talk about that one. But the thing is with AJ Lee, I mean, was there ever a female that really said the things that were on their mind before her? Or am I missing somebody? Jeff?
No, I mean,
that's what made it remarkable. And if you looking back on it now, coincidence, and then she's married to CM Punk. I mean, you know, maybe that's why they're so compatible, because they just know how to deliver that, you know, that what's on their mind, to put over business, to get the fans' interest. To be honest with you, I wasn't a big fan of AJ Lee until then. So if that sums it up more or less, that kind of, you know, we all have times where we don't like somebody and then they do something on a performance that pulls us in. And I still have yet to, you know, get pulled in by John Cena, but I'll let you know if that ever happens. But AJ Lee definitely pulled me in right there.
Yeah, that was one of the best female promos of all time. Maybe the best female promo of all time, in my opinion. James, your thoughts?
Yeah, I know. And, you know, I cringe when they don't mention AJ Lee or give her due credit, because I think that was the night where hashtag Give Divas a Chance became the number one trend worldwide. And they always just, like WWE does, they erase people from history that are unfavorable in their view. And I cringe because that was such a monumental moment for women's wrestling, and she just doesn't get the credit she deserves.
She absolutely does deserve it.
Kicking, you know, really doing the kickoff. So that's my thoughts on it.
You know, I'm reading her book right now, Crazy My Superpower, and everything she overcame to get to that moment in her life was unbelievable. And the fact that she was allowed to cut that promo, speak her mind, let everybody know that the women deserved a better chance than they were giving, and then they just erase her from existence. It was like, this is heartbreaking.
Yeah. So
you know what made that promo so special too? Look at the way they brought her in. Remember how she was like so quiet and you know, she'd skip to the ring. She, you know, what does she have, like the plaid shorts? And just her character development that led to her unleashing like that. Yep. And that could have been her, not obviously more than it was WWE, but that made
it was definitely more her than
that made it special, though, that she was able to get from, you know, down here to up here.
Yeah. And like you said, Virtue, Punk has a lot of them. I mean, there's so many we could talk about. We could do a whole video just on CM Punk's great promos.
Go to my Twitter.
You know, the one he cut, you know, with the contract signing with Cena and Vince McMahon, and in 2013 he cut this promo on a fan. You know, the promo on The Rock when he said The Rock's, what was it? His hands are too short to box with God.
Box with God.
That was a great one. And The Miz has had a lot of great promos over the years. You know, a couple recent ones with John Cena ripping into John Cena.
Talking Smack.
Yeah.
The Talking Smack.
The one on Daniel Bryan. That was
go
a
play in
one
bingo
too.
halls. Yeah, that was.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we saw quite a few great ones on Talking Smack, but yeah, that one that The Miz did on Daniel Bryan, I mean, that was awesome. To, you know,
that literally had me coming out of my chair going, Miz, you're a bastard.
Yeah.
Well, I had hope that there was an angle going on, you know, but nothing really came of it.
But man,
As long as
other than the Miz is incredible now, and I think that boosted Miz.
As long as WWE refuses to clear Bryan, which they're smart to do, by the way, they will never happen.
But yeah, I think it's the same thing with all those other promos. You know, the Miz just really started to show the passion, you know, and just vent his frustrations. And, you know, unfortunately, guys are not given enough opportunities to do that now on WWE television. The closest we've seen is the stuff with the Miz and Maurice making fun of John Cena and Nikki Bella. I mean, that was really the closest we've gotten to, like, the lines being blurred between fiction and reality. But
well, it's funny because a little while back, they were talking about there's real heat between Sasha Banks and Alexa Bliss, and I go, you know, it might not be that far of a stretch. There might be a real heat there.
Yeah.
So
and that's the best stuff. You know, Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. I remember that one promo where Shawn super kicked Bret when Bret was in the excuse me, I'm talking like Porky Pig here, in the wheelchair. That super kick, and you know, just you know, them taking the jabs back and forth. And I believe, you know, going back, you know, when Bret did that promo the night after WrestleMania, when Shawn came out and started ripping into Bret, I mean, that was great stuff too. And they brought up, you know, I think Shawn called Bret a mark man, you know, you really believe all this is yours, and all that stuff. So yeah, they had some really great back and forth promos. Oh, another one I want to mention. I mean, I think this is the longest panel video we've ever done.
Over an hour, really, but yeah.
Long. Poor Outcast Kid, because we're going to have him on too. I wanted to mention the night after Bad Blood, when Bret came out and cut the promo with Shawn, and Bret started calling them homos. I mean, what's going on there? You want to talk about a pipe bomb?
All I know is it's hard to argue, in my opinion, that 1997 was the greatest promo year in recent memory.
And remember Shawn telling Bret sunny days?
Yeah,
something like that.
Yes.
I actually saw that one when I was kind of researching for this, and I had forgotten about that and had to go back and watch it. And then it was
heavy. That was heavy duty.
Yeah, Bret calling Bret making the homophobic remarks towards Shawn and Hunter, and all that stuff was just fantastic. Very captivating television, and Shawn, of course, saying I'm the showstopper, and you know. Saying that, you know, talking about Hall and Nash in WCW, saying that the clique runs this business. Don't confuse. What was the phrase? Don't confuse.
I forget now. Yeah.
Expansion or something or other.
Don't confuse expansion for
destruction. I don't know.
Destruction, something like that. Yeah, something like that.
But it was around that time they started DX too. You know, with that promo. So yeah, I think we've said enough for this video. There are so many there are so many topics we could cover in this video, but you know we'll stop it here. If you guys have any other ones that we missed, hopefully we did not miss anything too significant. Leave a comment on NoDQ.com and the YouTube channel. Let us know what you thought about the video. I want to thank our special guest James for being on. You were an awesome guest today. Any plugs you have?
Follow me on Instagram at BostonPunk_127. That's about it.
All right. Well, thanks again, James. Follow Jeff at _Jeff Meacham on Twitter, and Virtue at NoDQ_Virtue. And you know where to find me. We will see you guys next time for another edition of the NoDQ panel. See you next time.